Hi, I'm Skip Nipper, and I want to welcome you to Baselines. My first guest is Bill Plott. Bill's an author. He's written two books about the Negro Leagues. The latest is about the Birmingham Black Barons, and he's also written the Negro Southern League, a baseball history from 1920 until 1951. You may know that this is the 100th anniversary of the Negro Leagues. And while the Negro National League was being formed in Kansas City, you may not know that the Negro Southern League was being formed in Birmingham. Both have a long and illustrious history. And as we celebrate that 100th anniversary of the Negro Leagues, and while you're listening to Bill Plott, why don't you take a minute and tip your cap to the Negro Leagues? And I hope you enjoy the first edition of Baselines. How you doing?
I'm okay. How about you?
I'm doing well. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on in the world, but I'm just happy to be living and breathing and enjoying life.
I know just it's just kind of hard to get a handle on it, but we're trying to break out a little bit, especially with him. He's been so good about dealing with this and trying to get him a little contact more with some friends and all. But you have to be careful. You have to talk to folks and make sure they're being careful.
Exactly. Yeah. I know our county mayor just declared us an emergency situation because we're a hot spot for COVID results the last day or two.
Yeah.
So, hey, it's going on everywhere. We just have to navigate through it the best we can.
Yeah.
I'm glad you joined me because we have this initiative that I think I wrote you about, trying to bring Major League Baseball to Nashville.
Right.
And John Lohr, who is the managing director of Music City Baseball, has declared that the team should be called the Nashville Stars. He's brought in Bob Kendrick from the Negro League Baseball Museum in Kansas City as an advisor. And because the Negro League Baseball, and with that 100th anniversary this year, just trying to give it some more attention. And the connection makes all kinds of sense, even that it is hopeful for a satellite museum from Kansas City to be a part of any new stadium here in town. So we're just going to see how that plays out. There's a lot of work going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, I heard there was a new stadium being talked about in Nashville.
It's just kind of a rendition. I think there's several options for property in surrounding counties and other areas of Nashville. It's just, people want to see something. And John came up with an idea to place a stadium concept right next to the Nissan Stadium where the football team plays. And it'd be quite a footprint, I think, for Nashville.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm sorry I missed the Southern Association Conference in Birmingham back in March. We had a tornado come through the Monday before,
Right.
I think, and just didn't feel comfortable with leaving, trying to help out people at church and other things. And I understand that it was great.
And we just barely got it in. You realize that,
Oh my
another
goodness.
week and we wouldn't have had it probably.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
We missed damage at our home by about 3/4 of a mile, but a couple of weeks later we had a terrific thunderstorm come through and I lost about 5 trees from my property. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah. So I'm going to show your book. This is the book that a lot of people are using now when they study Southern League, Negro Southern League history. And I think this is the best one.
Thank you.
And I really enjoyed it. In fact, you autographed it for me and put a little something in there, and I'm grateful for that. So if you would kind of tell me who you are. I mean, what your background was in sports writing, I believe, wasn't it?
Well, actually, it wasn't. I was just a reporter, but early in my career, I started helping out with high school football, things like that. In the early days, that we could get a little coffee money by helping out on weekends with it. And I just got where I really enjoyed it, and it was something I did regularly. And when I was working at the Anniston Star, which was one of my early jobs out of college, people in town talked about that Ty Cobb had played in Anniston, and that's what got me into research. I got really curious about that, started researching it. I became a correspondence friend with Lee Allen, who was a Hall of Fame historian at that time, and it just kind of went from there. And of course, when Bob Peterson's book came out, Only the Ball Was White, I said, good Lord, here's a whole area that nobody knows anything about. And that's what I really enjoyed, was researching something new. It's do we really need another biography of Satchel Paige, or I
Yeah.
like doing something new.
Right, I get that. I think Only the Ball Was White was the first book that I read. In fact, I haven't been to any places lately where I could take it, but I used to bring it down to Birmingham to the Rickwood Classic and have some of those Negro Leaguers sign the inside cover, and I've got several.
Oh
I got a
yeah,
couple of guys from Nashville too. It's still kind of the Bible for me, for Negro League baseball from the beginning. Of course, I
right.
think yours is the preeminent one for Negro Southern League. Um, but it is something that has been ignored for way too long. And I, um, I hope that you can kind of fill us in on the basis, background information for the Negro Southern League, which started in 1920, I think.
It did. Yeah, it was organized just a few weeks after the Negro National League was organized in Kansas City,
Yeah,
and it became, of course, over time, something of a feeder to the so-called major league level, the Negro National League.
right.
It lasted until 1936, although not playing every year. There were blanks in there when it didn't operate. Like in 1924 and 25, for example, the previous year, Birmingham and Memphis were so dominant that about the only teams that could beat them was each other. And at the halfway point in the season, when the first half ended, they applied for admission to the Negro National League, got it, and for the second half of the season, the Southern League folded until 1926 then. So,
Yeah, yeah,
and that was a momentous year in 1926 because that was Satchel Paige's debut year with Chattanooga.
yeah, with Chattanooga. How important was it that Tom Wilson was involved in that from the beginning?
Well, he was a very important figure. Of course, he founded the Elite Giants, and they were a main player in the Negro Southern League up through 1932. And after that, they went into the Negro National League and were gone. We're not back in the South again. The Birmingham and Memphis made that transition also a couple of times back into the Negro National League. But my impression was that a lot of the other teams in the National League were not really happy at having Birmingham and Memphis in there because of the additional travel that was involved in that, coming from such a long distance for them.
Which answers the question of why Tom Wilson moved the Eli Giants around, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I don't know exactly what was the original intent, but he moved it to either Columbus or Cleveland at one point, and
Yeah.
then to Washington for a year, and then they finally settled in Baltimore.
Yeah, I think in 31, maybe Birmingham was looking for some extra cash and they had Satchel Paige under contract. And I think Wilson picked that up and moved the team to Cleveland, changed the name to Cubs, but it didn't last very long. He was looking for increased attendance, and I don't think he got it.
Yeah,
So but he remained a stalwart in the Negro National League for up until he died in 1947. Maybe they booted him out as the president in 46 or somewhere in that time frame.
yeah, yeah.
Now, but then when he had Baltimore Elite Giants, he still made his home in Nashville.
He did, and I think he had some connection. I'm not exactly sure what it was, but I think he had some connection with the Black Balls when they started up in 45 and the Cubs, because there were references to the Cubs being like a minor league team, so to speak, for his major league team.
Right. And Bill Greason, I think, was on that 1945 team.
I think he was.
Yeah, he told me at that Negro Southern League conference that was at Rickwood Field maybe a year and a half ago. I asked him that question. And I also asked him if he remembered the Cubs, and he said yes, but he didn't play for them.
Okay.
And then we moved into the Cubs, and the Cubs went out of business. Maybe it gets a little convoluted there around 48, 49, 50 after the Negro National League. Well, after the Negro Leagues, basically after the 1948 World Series, they kind of dissolved a little bit, didn't they?
Yeah. Well, you at that point you lost the Negro National League. They went belly up, and so that left only the Negro American League, and you began to see the hyphenated names when two cities have to go together to stay afloat and that sort of thing. Yeah, it was a rapid downhill from there. And you know, you can, and I'm not the first one to say this, you can blame it on Jackie Robinson,
Sure.
because once Jackie came along, and you can understand this if you're in that culture, you've got a genuine hero, and that's where your attention goes. And the newspapers, the Pittsburgh Courier, the Chicago Defender, you start looking at the sports pages after Jackie debuts, and that's the lead item. And the local teams are second
Yeah.
in concern after that.
And you mentioned the newspapers. Part of the problem with research is incomplete game accounts, very few box scores, very few biographies, certainly at the local level. And I know Pittsburgh and Chicago and had newspapers that followed the teams a little bit more in depth. But it's really hard to find anything about Nashville baseball history as it pertains to Negro League ball.
Yeah, one of the puzzlements that I never solved with Nashville is I have a list of all of the Nashville teams in the Negro Southern League, but I don't have a manager for 1923. And in fact, after you and I had set this up, I went into the Nashville Banner and scanned the first 2 or 3 weeks in May, just looking, and I found no reference whatsoever to the team. And the only series I could tell that they played was maybe one in Birmingham, one in St. Louis.
Yeah.
But I have no idea who the manager may have been for that year.
You wrote in your book in the introduction about something that Lucius Melancholy Jones, who was the sports editor for the Atlanta Daily World, wrote about inconsistencies in reporting with Negro League baseball. Do you remember that?
Yeah, he did, and there's several other people did too over there. But I particularly I love his name.
That's a great name.
That's a great name.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Melancholy.
He was a very outstanding sports writer, very good writer, and
Right.
did a good job in Atlanta. But
Yeah.
there was this huge inconsistency. If you look at standings, when you can find them, say a set of standings in July, and you total up the wins and total up the losses, they do not balance. It is not a proven set of standings, and it was very rare to find a set that did prove.
Well, there's a fine line. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
You'll say that it's because some teams report the game, some don't report them, and there's just this huge inconsistency in it.
Yeah, and that inconsistency, there's a fine line sometimes between a team that's in a league and a team that's barnstorming.
Yeah.
Because the teams, you write in your book that teams would run out of money mid-season, so the league would start dissolving and they'd take on new teams, and who knows what the standings or the records were.
Yeah. And that was what you had asked me about the Nashville Stars, and I got to looking back at, and I realized that in the late 40s, those last years of the Negro Southern League, I found no reference to the Stars whatsoever. They were obviously an independent team, and there may have been a few players who also played with the Cubs as well as the Stars. Jimmy Zapp appears to have been on both rosters one year,
Right.
and but they were an independent team.
Well, how many times, of course, I'm being from Nashville, how many times I have seen reference to, in the country music business, country music stars are coming to pick a city, Topeka, Kansas, and the newspaper ad may say, Nashville Stars will be here at the Coliseum on Wednesday night. And I think sometimes those advertisements or those reports of a team coming from Nashville, what do you call them? Well, you call them the Nashville Stars, because I think honestly, sometimes they weren't sure who was going to be on the roster that game.
Yeah.
So it's been hard to find exactly who the Nashville Stars were, other than the picture that I sent over to you of the 4 players, which tells us that they bought uniforms, and I'm sure they played, because there are a few games that are referenced. And then the bus with Nashville Stars on the side of it. Now, does that mean country music? I mean, and it also says Negro Southern League.
Yeah, that was the really, really interesting thing to me, that it says that, and the broadsheet that you sent me said member of the Negro Southern League on there. And like I said, when I was researching those last years in the 40s, I never encountered the Nashville Stars at all. It was the Black Balls and then the Cubs.
There were two nightclub owners here in Nashville, Ted Acklin and Sue Bridgeforth. Each one owned a club. And I heard Sidney Bunch tell me one time at a conference or at a little gathering at the Metro Archives that he played for Sue Bridgeforth and he worked at his club. So I think there was some combination there of whether you were a ball player or a porter, waiter, whatever you want to call it, cook. I mean, I don't know. And maybe even a patron that you could play ball for his baseball team. I have not been able to pinpoint who claimed the Nashville Stars. I see in some later reports that Sue Bridgeforth bought, for example, the Baltimore Elite Giants, but he played a few home games in Nashville at Sulphur Dale. And didn't he buy the Birmingham Black Barons like 53 or 4 or something like that?
He owned them for a few years. And I will tell you a really interesting small world story about Sue Bridgeforth. A friend of mine here in Montevallo, excuse me, who has written several books of various kinds, and he has been researching his family history. Greg is from Athens, Alabama, up near the Tennessee line there. And he told me the story. We were having a drink one day and just chatting, and he was telling me about his research. And he said he and his mother were in town one day when he was a kid, and she went over to this group of black women and talked to them for a little while. And he asked who that was, and she said, "That's some of your other family members." And so there was an acknowledgement in this family that there had been racial mixing back years ago and everything.
Sure.
The wild thing turns out that family was Sue Bridgeforth's family.
No kidding.
Greg is telling me this, and I said, "Wait a minute, this is too strange."
Yeah.
Too strange, because I was at that very time doing the research on the Sue Bridgeforth years. And Greg hooked me up with his daughter or granddaughter, and she got the picture to me that was used in the book.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, that's great. You know, there's a kind of, everybody has a dark side, I think, but there's a dark side to not specifically to Negro League baseball, but some of the owners. There was a dark side to. They were running the numbers or gambling or that kind of a thing that you wonder whether they were producing games just to feed their habits, so to speak.
Well, there was the numbers racket out of Memphis, I think, was very, very big in the 30s, and some of it came into Birmingham through some ownership and whatever. And one of the most curious things to me in that time period, in the late 30s, Birmingham had a manager for 3 years named Andrew Walker, and you can find nothing about this man anywhere. That he does not show up on a baseball roster anywhere. There's just nothing out there. But there was a Walker in Birmingham who was an important numbers bracketeer, which makes me wonder if they were kin, and this guy got this job, but he never shows up anywhere before or after those 2 or 3 years that he's managed the Birmingham Black Barons there.
Yeah. Well, I can't think of the author, but Invisible Men mentions Tom Wilson from early days. I think Greenlee. I think there's several of them that were kind of tied in together in different cities, different areas. It doesn't take anything away from what we want to remember as the great talent that these players had. Several of them are in the Hall of Fame. There should be a few more, I think, as we go along. And those that started in the Negro Leagues, like Henry Aaron and Willie Mays. So, the attention is coming here with the 100th anniversary of the Negro Leagues, finally getting some attention. It's sad that I think COVID-19 has kind of taken some of that luster away. But
well, we were going to have a terrific year in Birmingham with celebrating the 100th anniversary of that and 110th anniversary of Rickwood Field at the same time.
Yeah.
I'm very sorry that we lost the conference.
Yeah. Do you think they're going to play Major League Baseball at all?
I don't think so, the way it looks right now.
I don't think so either.
The billionaires and the millionaires cannot come to terms with
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
That's just kind of crazy. But it is what it is, right?
Well, we've enjoyed some Korean baseball.
Yeah, I watched a little bit of it, and
Right.
I want to get out and watch a Little League game, but now with this new emergency thing, I'm not sure we're going to be able to do that. So,
Well, we don't watch it every day. I will record it the night before, and we'll watch it the next afternoon, just like a brand new game to us that way. And for what it's worth, we are LG Twins fans, and I really can't define that totally for you, but we are.
There you go. Well, you've been very helpful, and I'm grateful that you would come on, and maybe we'll do this again. But you've been great, and I'm grateful. Now, one other thing, you have another book that's just published, right?
Yeah, the history of the Birmingham Black Barons.
The history of the Birmingham Black Barons. Yeah.
Yeah.
We want to be sure that we mention that.
That was another one that I was glad to get out of the way. But and the problem now, and I told my wife when I was talking about our meeting today, I said, I got to go do some research, because when the Negro Leagues book came out, all of that stuff started going out of my mind, and other things were filling in that space.
I get the feeling. I understand that. I understand that.
So the same way with the Black Barons now. When people ask me things, I say, you got to go to the book, or give me time to go to the book. I can't remember that stuff.
I've done the same thing. People ask me a question, and I have to try to figure out what page I wrote that on.
Right.
Well, anyway, it's been great. And is it Atticus that loaned you his Chromebook today?
Yes.
Tell him thank you, and we're grateful.
I would indeed.
Look forward to doing this again, okay?
Good to talk to you, Skip.
Good talking to you. Hope to see you soon.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.